Good afternoon. Today, today, February 26, 2025. This is the Operations Committee members meeting. Members present, David Kraut, who is he's participating remotely. Howard Pullaby, he's a
Also
member of
remote.
he's also remote. Lydia Tang is also a member, but she is not present. And Faye Christian, I'm the committee chair. Today, we're going to begin our meeting with the first item on the agenda. I forgot to mention the time, I'm sorry. Right now, it is 3:31. First Street midlife overhauls and service updates. And that is, so let us begin. Put that out.
You want me to share the screen?
Yes.
You want to keep it like this or extend?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I should introduce who else is here. We have our CEO is present. Our COO is present. I'm sorry. Mary Cook, our CFO
Yes.
present is Ms. Amin. Ms. Coonan is our crew. Our deputy attorney is Ms. Pasco, and we have Brian, your
Director of Communications.
Nestor Ortiz, our new Director of Transportation. Anthony Forenza, Fleet Supervisor, and Juji Perez, Assistant Director of Operations. We're all present. And so now Mary Coonan, you're going to begin.
Just for the record, Dr. Melima just joined.
Oh, yes, and a committee meeting, Dr. Melanie just walked in, and I totally ignored you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. All good.
Yep, so thank you. Today we're going to talk about the bus midlife overhauls. This was originally discussed the end of last year during a board meeting when we went over some of the fleet preventative maintenance enhancements that we wanted to make sure were done this year to really ensure the continuity of our fleet. So introducing our Director of Transportation, Nestor Ortiz, and our Fleet Supervisor, Anthony Frazita. And just before they get started, I just want to mention that Anthony joined the team at the end of summer last year and has truly made an incredible impact on our fleet maintenance, our team, and also the way that we are managing our parts and equipment. So I really do commend him for his efforts and all the hours that he's put in and time to really get that in a much better place. And Nestor recently joined the team earlier this year, and he's also begun to make a very positive impact himself, and I'll let them take it away.
Thank you. I believe that the midlife overhauls was an alternative to creating new buses without having to purchase brand new buses. A new bus runs, 1.4 million? And depending on the type of bus it is, whether it be an electric that we're looking for or a hybrid that we're looking for, it can go even higher than that. The alternative is doing a midlife overhaul because it extends the life of that existing bus at a quarter of the cost. So we will effectively be efficient and provide service to the residents and visitors of Roosevelt Island seamlessly.
So yeah, basically, with overhaul, they replace all the drivetrain components, engines, transmission, all the air parts, suspension parts. We go through a lot of airbags and shocks and radius rods driving around the island, you know, the main street and everything. The engine, you know, these buses have about 20,000 miles, and the transmission, so we're running the original powertrain, so we do replace that, which is essentially making it a very new bus. These buses are structurally sound. There's, you know, parts that fail, mostly the alternators and starters and things of that nature. So everything they're replacing are known parts to fail. So, you know, we're preventive, you know, being preventive about it and replacing everything. That's part of the overhaul. Operator seats, you know, as you see, as the one pictured, they're in, you know, a little bit of disarray. For all the future use, remember the 8 and 9 are in 2016, so they have been on the road for some time, you know, going on 9 years. So we want to make sure operators are, you know, comfortable and safe, and they can operate the bus properly.
As you can imagine, a driver having an 8-hour shift in a seat that looks like that or isn't as functional can be a distraction and thereby dangerous and unsafe for our passengers. So it's not a small part of the bus. When we look at a seat, it's one of the main parts of the bus, is the operator's seat.
All right, passenger seat upgrades is another thing we're introducing to the overhauls. Currently 8 and 9 have fabric seats, which are much harder to clean and sanitize. So we will be retrofitting them with plastic seats as the new buses have, so they're easier to clean and maintain. For passengers feel more comfortable and whatnot, more clean. Another thing, we're gonna be doing body repairs. Some of them are a little banged up through the years, as you see. You know, this prevents any further damage, rust, or structural damage, whatnot, and, you know, obviously we don't want the bus looking like that on the road.
This can lead to frame corrosion, which will decommission the vehicle completely. Catching it now and finding out these body injuries and correcting it now will save us or bring us into the next decade of another 10 years with these buses.
We also want to introduce a new bus wrap to the buses, so after body repairs are made, instead of painting them, we want to wrap them for several reasons. One being they're easy to repair, so instead of making, you know, repairs to the bus, we could just throw the wrap on it instead of sending it out and getting it painted. We could do that in-house. It's also a new look for the island, for the residents, for everyone coming by, you know, nice fresh look of the red buses.
Could you explain exactly what a body wrap is?
It's like a sticker. Instead of painting the bus, so like all the damage that you saw, they'll fix it, you know, and obviously after you fix it, they sand it, and then you would have to paint it. Instead of that, you just throw the wrap on top of it, you don't have to worry about any paint.
Body work is comprised of so many different steps that cost us. In this case, or this alternative, they can just straighten the body and then wrap it, and this wrap is segmented. So if a little piece of the bumper is what's scraped, then they can take that piece off and replace it at lowest cost to us, as opposed to a body job that would have to literally take the whole quarter part of that bus and charge us thousands of dollars more just to make it look like that. These buses are pictured as wrapped. So you see the little design going up in the back, the design going up in the front, and the RIAC sign in the middle. That's literally the wrap.
Well, I don't believe any of us will argue with this. Definitely see the improvement right away, the cost effectiveness.
So PM service, or preventative maintenance services, is misconstrued by many to think that it's just like getting an oil change in our cars. It's not. Preventative maintenance is a scheduled service that we bring a bus into the shop and do a full diagnostic on every part of that bus proactively. In other words, we do not wait for an airbag to blow or any types of line leakage to bring it into the shop. We calculate idling hours, engine hours, to schedule these buses into the shop, do a full diagnostic and say, oh, wait, something is going wrong, let's fix it now before it gets worse. And, when we do these midlife overhauls, that's literally the next era, what we'll be going into, which will extend the life to 10, maybe 12, hopefully 14 years from now on these buses that are costing us a quarter of the amount of a new bus. So that's what I try to explain here with buses 8 and 9, which are the two buses we're sending out.
We didn't have preventive maintenance in the past.
Preventative maintenance is something that's practiced, and is always practiced. A lot of times when you're short-staffed, you don't have the opportunity to take in a bus when we can. Or we have an older bus, that is completely broken down, and it's taking all of our resources and labor hours to neglect the other buses from getting their preventative maintenance, thereby compounding problematic areas in on the other buses. So when we came in, we looked at the big picture and said, okay, what is the triage here? Which do we need to decommission? How do we decommission and continue service? How do we do this without interrupting service whatsoever? And Anthony's been doing a great job with sourcing parts, with working with different vendors that are doing work for us in addition to our mechanics on hand to take care of the same work at a lesser cost to us. And so far, we've been to the point where we're making serious repairs as well as performing preventative maintenance. So preventative maintenance in any fleet is a standard practice. Sometimes there are situations that don't allow that to happen.
Well, I definitely expect it, because that's what we do with our cars. We take them in. Is this diagnostics with the computer?
Yeah.
As
Yeah. Like when you get your inspection on your car and they say, hey, I gotta plug it in, it goes directly to DMV to prove you did your inspection? That's what we do.
nice and quick.
I think the big shift too with the preventative maintenance, plan that we have in place is going from servicing based on mileage to servicing based on hours of use and idle time. The island is not getting any larger, it's roughly 2 miles, so to get to that 6,000 mile mark is gonna take some time. However, the hours of service can be sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day, so it makes more sense to focus on the hours rather than the miles, especially for these buses that we have here.
The hours of service definitely comes up faster. So we have to have, right now the ratio of vehicle to mechanic is 15 to 1. There's no way a mechanic can do major repairs and preventative service on 15 vehicles. So we have to balance that out somehow. And if that means me putting on gloves and putting on a lug nut, then I'm gonna do that. So we all jump in and make sure that everything is taken care of, so service is uninterrupted.
Well, I'm very happy to have you and have your services, because, as you know, we had a great deal of difficulty in the past with the buses, and we don't want this ever happening again.
And we're planning on that, on making sure that it does not happen ever again.
Do you have a list of the buses and how old they are and?
Yes, their age, we have a record of their service, VIN numbers, the ages.
This is at the last operations and board meeting.
Right.
And all of that's tracked within software to better manage.
And I'm assuming that all the buses other than bus 1 and 2, which are new, have like more than 180,000 miles on them?
8 has 2001 and 9 has 177.
You gotta understand, we're talking about diesel engines, and what that means is, a diesel engine is a tractor-trailer engine. Those engines can go 500,000 miles and be just fine. I've worked on plenty of Cummins engines, which are diesel engines and tractor-trailers with 550,000 miles that purr. Well-kept equipment will purr. What Mary's talking about is that we abuse our vehicles in a way that's odd. We don't go across country. We go 2 miles. And in that 2 miles, we're going over rough terrain. So what we're worried about is the 22-hour service, nonstop service of engine idling hours as opposed to engine mileage. Engine miles that across country on a highway is healthier than us stopping and going back and forth on the island. So we have to calculate a whole lot less mileage before we look at a bus to overhaul it or even decommission.
So from what you just said, these buses are like
Yes.
not great, except for the two new ones.
Exactly.
Right? So we have two good buses, and then we have 5 buses that are potentially to break down at any minute. Is that right? I don't
No,
know.
what do you mean by not great?
Not great, because he said, so they have 180,000 miles on them, right? Which is not 180,000 miles because we're not going by the miles, we're going by the hours. So it's probably more the equivalent of 400,000 miles, which is potentially the end of their life, right? And so we're gonna rehab 2 of them, but what about the other 3 that could be taken out at any minute? Is that,
So we're working on those other 3.
okay,
And we've diagnosed those to be healthy motors, trannies, and really the issue we have here on the island are more stabilizers, airbags, suspension. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's more cosmetic as well as all the parts surrounding our engine and tranny. We've chosen these 2 buses because, yes, those are the ones that ultimately sent us back a message on the computer that said, this is not gonna work. We're not gonna go for you anymore. You know, we're on our last leg. And the midlife overhaul is, right now, it's optimum for these 2 buses to go another 10, 12, hopefully 14 years.
right. And so those are the 2016 buses.
Yeah.
So then there's the 2018 buses, which are theoretically 2 years younger. But then there's the 2009 bus. Is that one?
Oh, that's, which one is that, 6?
That's only the.
Yeah,
That's
that's, he's done, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember too, yeah, we resurrected that one. It wasn't originally planned to still be around, but, you know, Anthony
That's
and
a
several
true
others worked
Frankenstein.
on
We
it.
just put a brain in the other
Yeah.
day and shocked it with a lightning bolt, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not anticipating that will be around much longer. We're gonna try and keep it running as long as we can. And I know New York City Transit has been helpful
Yeah.
in trying to help
MTA
provide
has been
parts and-
amazing with us. So with their support, we're able to source parts for that older model. That's not a new Flyer, it's an Orion. So, you know, there's really, the parts are scarce, and MTA has been very good with helping us out with that. So we're trying to keep it in service as long as possible until we can decommission that as well.
Okay. And how long does the rehab cost or take?
Around 2 months.
2 months, okay. And then, do we think that after the 2 buses, 8 and 9, then 10 and 11 will also need the rehab?
Not soon. Those are the ones that we have been able to read and say, okay, engine and tranny are healthy. It's the surrounding parts which we're able to source a little bit better because it's New Flyer. And the company that's doing the overhaul is a certified rebuilder of New Flyer. So we have a lot more flexibility with those as opposed to our Frankenstein number 6.
Okay, but that one's going away.
That one's going on.
That one's going
Yeah.
away. Okay.
And as a contingency plan, we are looking for new quotes from New Flyer for an additional bus.
And just so from my knowledge, and I keep forgetting this and I apologize, but in an ideal situation, how many buses do we need?
Ideally, if you ask me, I will always say, every 4 buses we have in service, we need 1. So if we have 4 blocks, we have to have at least 5 to 6 buses in order to create that PM cycle the way we're supposed to and have uninterrupted service all the way around. So technically, we should have at least 7 buses
Okay.
Which is what we have now.
with numbers.
With Frank.
Exactly.
With Frank. And are we using the minibus things?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. That does, Octagon Express work for us.
great. And does that fill up using the Octagon?
It fills up, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, especially at 8 o'clock.
And then we also have the Rita bus on, rental lease that takes folks back and forth to Costco.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Okay, I think you've answered most of our questions. So if we have the midlife service done, that'll be one at a time?
Absolutely. We can't afford, to put both out, although that would be lovely, without affecting service. So, New Flyer, Northeastern Rebuilders, have promised us 1.5, 2 months, and I think that's a pretty good turnaround, especially because they're certified in New Flyer rebuilding. So we're gonna anticipate 1.5 months without one bus at a time.
Great, but we have the 2 new buses and we have the 3 that are currently being managed besides these
Correct.
2 open buses.
Correct.
Great. Okay, well, I think this is a very good course of action. And congratulations on being employed at REOC and enjoying the benefits of a small fleet.
Yeah, thank you.
Stop share.
That's all.
I have no further questions. What's the cost of these rehabs, by the way? I just don't have it handy.
It's about, 250,000 for each bus.
One is about 200, the other one is about 240, which we're proud to say came in way under budget.
But then also we'll have a contingency
Yes.
as well for any parts or repairs.
So we have roughly 50,000 in excess for each bus.
Okay, and if that secures us many years of additional service, that's well worth it.
Absolutely.
It is. The new driver seats for the buses, what type of bus seats or what will be, are you selecting for the bus drivers?
It's the same seat, it's just gonna be new.
But are they very comfortable?
Oh, absolutely.
I really think that, we want our drivers very comfortable since they're doing the driving.
Yep.
I don't think anyone would, be against spending a couple extra dollars for the best seats that we could possibly put them
And
in.
I'm glad you say that. I know our drivers will be very happy to hear that as well. So we're definitely gonna source the best seats for them. We just don't want them falling asleep too.
Certainly don't. Okay. Any other questions? Okay then. Item 2 is the uniform services contract.
Okay, good afternoon.
Right.
So, for those who don't know me, my name is Joey Perez. I work as the Director of Operations at REAC. First and foremost, good evening. Good afternoon to all of you and for the time. I'm here today to present our uniform service contract that we endeavored ourselves last year to look into. So a little bit of a background, since 2008, we have been outsourcing our laundry services for all of our unionized staff members. Since within the bargaining sheet, their respective bargaining sheet contracts, it is stated that we are supposed to provide them with both uniforms and the laundry services for said uniforms. During these past few years, we have been working with these separate entities to provide the services. However, we never had a contract in place with these entities. And this has caused us to both increase prices on a yearly basis, as well as costs for each employee staff, as well as the laundry services and the uniforms, because they go both market price, basically. So, with the endeavor of this contract, we have few goals in mind. One, to help resolve some of the issues that were brought up by the staff members. Second is to streamline the current process that we currently have with these two things and bring both separate contracts into one, so we can, manage the whole system as a whole much, much better. First, to start with some of the issues that we have with this, some of the complaints that we have from the staff was that the current services that were provided for laundry services were not being properly provided. So uniforms were being left dirty, stained, which caused the lifespan of the uniforms to lower. Hence, we have to replace the uniforms more and more often, sorry, I apologize. And because of this, again, operational cost goes up because where I have to replace only 2 uniforms a year because they were in good conditions and well maintained, now I have to replace 4 or 5. So with this goal, we are proposing that we go into a contract with Cintas corporations because they are able to provide us with both the uniform rentals that we need and also the laundry services, while also allowing us to manage and track all of the uniforms that we provide to each staff member to the portal. And not only this, we can track they provide us with a replacement. It's all inclusive in the price. So they give us a rental of the uniforms. They come and size all of our staff members individually, so we don't longer have to go and readjust as the staff either increases in their body or decreases in the body type. So that way it's easier. If they have to change it, we'll call the contractor. Hey, we need this person resized. They'll come resize it free of cost. They'll replace the clothing, all free of cost. It's all inclusive in the contract. And as well as each staff member will also have color-coded and bar-coded uniforms. So that way we know which uniform belongs to which staff member. You already know. There won't be an issue of misunderstanding which staff has which staff uniforms. They will be hanged in a specified location, picked up every week on the same day. They will be having 2 sets of uniforms. One will be here. They will have basically 2 sets of each thing. So if they need 5 pants for the week, they'll have 11 pants. They have 6 pants on site, basically the ones they're going to be using all week, plus the one they have on them the day they come to pick up the uniforms, plus 5 on their Cintas site, which is being laundered throughout the week. And when they come and bring up, they bring the complete set of uniforms that they had in the facility, swap it for the ones that they have here dirty, bring those in, so now they have a complete set of uniforms. This is inclusive of both summer gear and winter gear, because we have to provide them with both the winter gear and the summer gear. This year, however, we will be only including them the summer gear because they currently have winter gear from the last year. So as that gear is, slowly diminishing, we will be replacing them and putting them into the contract. Okay. So, price and cost analysis, which is the most important thing. So, in compliance with New York State, we went out and we contacted the MWBE companies as well as the market price. Some of the companies didn't even respond back to us, and a few of them did respond to us, and instead of telling us something, they told us that they were not interested in bidding to the contract. Cintas was the only company that got back to us with pricing, and we be in conversations with them ever since to make sure that we get the accurate information that we need. So with that in mind, what we decided to do was do a cost analysis of how much money we were spending on our current services that we provide using up to date for the last 3 years, since we would like to go into a contract for a 3-year period with Cintas to ensure that we have a set pricing over a long period of time without having to come back and forth. So within the average of that cost analysis of the current services, we found out that it was costing us a total of $36,941 on average a year for the last 3 years. That is inclusive of both the laundry services, which came in at roughly $15,000, and the uniform purchases, which came around $21,600 average for the last 3 years. In addition, when we compare it with Cintas gave us all, like I said, it's all inclusive. We don't have to rent. It came at a total of $43,137. Now, the $36,000 that the current services that we are spending on is not inclusive of all the staff that each department is supposed to have, because all of the departments that are going to be taking action in place in this contract currently are not fully staffed and have not been fully staffed for the last 2 years. So with that in mind, I took delivery of making sure that in the future we are hoping to fill up these positions, and this should be accounted for in the contract to begin with, so that we don't have to come back and request a change. So, with that said in mind, also just be aware that we are also taking part of their Omnia program that Cintas offer as part of a big agency program for all public entities such as state, city levels. And basically, this allows us to have a discounted price from the general market. And in addition to that, we get an additional 10% discount price, 10% discount on any item that's not within their catalog. So they have their own catalog, which is already at their own rates, which is cheaper, and then any item that's not in the catalog, we get an additional 10% plus the rate that they already got. So recommendation and board approval. So I think I already said this, but I'm here to recommend that we go into a 1-year contract with options to renew for 2 additional years with Cintas for a total amount of $43,137.12, and with a contingency of 20%, which will be an additional $8,627, just in case we do have additional expenses that come up, such as price increases and so on and so forth. However, it is very least likely that a price increase will happen as of now, because they just had a recent one in 2024. So they reassured me that most likely we're gonna have one for at least another 2 years. So at least we should be okay. And the price changes don't only affect us, it affects every company that's under the Cintas contract, the umbrella. It doesn't just affect Riak as a whole, it affects everybody within Cintas. So, yeah, that would be my presentation in a short.
When does the contract commence into it?
So the contract will commence 6 weeks after fully being approved on us, and we issue an appeal. So basically, it's a 6-week period for them to come in and size every staff member, get us the materials in, set up the delivery area, and then once that's set, I will take all the uniforms from the staff that they currently have. Once the uniforms get handed in, I will take all the uniforms that they currently have, so they are no longer utilizing those older uniforms, and then they will have the new shoes. This also will allow us to have more space in the locker rooms, because right now they have a lot of lockers. They have 2 or 3 lockers sometimes now, because they have a lot of uniforms for the week. This will also let them the amount of space that we can use in the area.
Okay. I don't really have any questions about uniforms, but I would love for them to have them and to look nice.
Yes, and they have been, this is something that I've been arguing about for the last 1.5 years, and we have been really trying. We did a survey, as a matter of fact, before we even went into this, to make sure to gather their thoughts about it and see what their thought process was, how they wanted to proceed. And actually, we went to Cintas because many of them reached out to me and were like, hey, how do you reach out to Cintas? I think Cintas will be a great addition to us, and that's one part of the reasons that we added them to the original request of interest that we were reaching out to.
I think they have wanted these uniforms. They've been complaining.
They deserve it. They do a good job. They've been very great, so they deserve it. It's a good thing, and we wanted to continue to be happy and doing the work that they want. We should be able to give them the things that they need to be able to do the job properly.
Well, I would like for them to definitely look the part.
Exactly.
And it's like anything else, right? If you're dressed nicely, or if you have a good uniform to put on, that, you feel proud, you feel good in that role, and, like Gigi mentioned, the staff really does a great job, and they deserve to, have that, and, hopefully have that feeling as well, aside from consolidating, this operation.
Yes, right. It was a great idea, and I'm glad we were able to get here and present it to you guys.
I'm happy you were able to find a company.
Yeah, well, I'm happy at least somebody
You
responded,
found a company.
Well, also, not a lot of companies provide both.
Yeah, not a lot of
I think
companies
Cintas
provide
is one of the
both.
only
Yes,
ones
so-
that actually meets the needs.
So it's probably why.
Could you-
Because I wanted to have all incorporated into one. We don't want to have, it's supposed to manage one thing. When everything is centralized, it's supposed to get all the information in one part versus having to go in different spaces. So now it takes me less time to see 2 things versus having to go to different areas to gather the information. It's just, time-wise, it's more effective to have everything centralized and all over. So that's just
Could you remind us what departments have the uniforms that will be covered by the contract?
So as of right now, it will be grounds, transportation, which includes the mechanics and the bus operators, as well as maintenance. PSD decided not to participate in the contract because Cintas did not provide them with their police uniform gear, and the ones that they did provide, they weren't happy with it. So, and they didn't really have many issues with the current services, as they do use the tri-clean services that they are using right now. So they didn't want to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Howard, they're not gonna have the tuxedos for board members anymore.
Oh, no, I was counting on that too. Yeah, I have a cummerbund for that. I don't know if it fits, but thank you, it sounds like a great
Thank you.
idea.
If there aren't any other questions, we're gonna move on to upcoming island events.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Daniels. I'm the Communications Director for the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. I have a little PowerPoint that we can sort through. Not the PowerPoint, not next slide. Yeah.
Let me get changed.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about our event planning for 2025. It's that time of year. Our island-wide events are quite popular. They're something that brings the community together, but they aren't just about, creating fun experiences for families in the community. It's also about building bonds and building bridges between island residents, the corporation, local small businesses. Everything is sort of comes together on these special days when we host these events. And it's up to my department, Communications and Community Affairs, to oversee them, make sure that the planning is done well, and that we have something that everybody can enjoy and engage with. And so what we did a little different this year, this will be the third year now that this iteration of the team is working on these projects. We decided to send out a survey to the community in January to sort of solicit feedback. We wanted to see, we have a general feel about how the events are going and what's working and what's not working, but we wanted to see how folks on the island felt about it. And so we sent out this questionnaire. We were focusing it on participation, overall satisfaction for the event, and then we solicited ideas for improvements, where we could change, what we could address, what could be additive, how could we make it a little better. We had 78 respondents, and it was actually a very nice cross-section of age ranges on the island. You'll actually notice if you add up the age ranges, it doesn't add up to 78. What we allowed families to do was, if it was a mother sitting down with her 2 kids, we just said put the ages of everybody who's involved in this process so that we can kind of get a sense of who's interested here. And then we also asked for feedback on how long the respondents had lived on the island. So, 36 came back, they've lived here more than 10 years, 27 respondents between 1 and 5 years, 5 to 10 years had 14 respondents, and then 1 person who has lived here less than a year and probably didn't even experience these events, felt to give some feedback, which we appreciated. So just diving right into it, we wanted to know what folks like most of all. And, not surprisingly to us, Roosevelt Island Day and the Halloween Parade are the 2 most popular events. The Halloween Parade is by far the most popular event. People seem to love it. Halloween is like a really big deal on this island. And it's sort of a different event from the other ones because it has the marching component down to South Point Park where we have the big festivities. And that's kind of also what Roosevelt Island Day has. It has a lot to draw people to it in terms of attractions and special giveaways and things of that nature. Fall for Arts, the summer movie series at South Point Park, and the holiday tree lighting all scored well, but not quite as high as Roosevelt Island Day and Halloween Parade. And then Earth Love Day, unfortunately, was voted the least popular event. It was also known as the least engaging and had the lowest participation rate. So we kind of know this internally. Earth Love Day is generally the first event we host of the year. It's in April. The weather is iffy sometimes. But we put a lot into it last year. We got a lot of community engagement. We had a lot of different programming around it. We did everything we could to promote it. And it just didn't have a lot of objects. And I think everybody here can appreciate the messaging around it, the importance of sustainability, trying to make sure that we are environmentally conscious. And that's great, and we should be doing that, I think, all the time, not just one day out of the year. But it became a little clear after doing this questionnaire that perhaps Earth Love Day has sort of outlived its usefulness. So, to that end, we think it would make sense this year to just scale back a little bit, eliminate Earth Love Day. It is, again, the lowest participation event, lowest level of engagement. We can reallocate a lot of the resources that go into the event to other events, not just monetarily, but some of the programming that's involved in that very easily can transfer over to Roosevelt Island Day. And it can allow us to sort of focus on a more compact schedule. It's easier for the staff to not have to, another day less planning, less overtime. So we think it makes sense to, instead of starting the calendar at Love Day in April, we would start the calendar at Roosevelt Island Day in June. Go to the next slide, Judy. And then again, so just going back to the questionnaire, you know, what were sort of the overarching themes that we found from the respondents? Shortening the calendar to focus more on popular events was something that we saw. Trying to find more community enrichment activities, and this is actually something we tried to do last year. There were things that we added to the events. The most popular one I'm thinking of is at Fall for Arts. We added a jazz concert that was very popular and very well attended right across the lawn in the library plaza. We did some pop-up jazz concerts as well at the library that were well received. And so how can we kind of do more of that stuff, more outdoor performances, music, expanded arts programs? I think we're trying to think about both ways to incorporate those into the events and then maybe do some more of that pop-up programming as well, just, you know, whenever we can make it work. Next steps, obviously, we implemented improvements based on our feedback. We've adjusted the annual calendar. And again, we're going to continue to solicit feedback from the community because that's really what's important, is whether or not we're delivering for the folks who live on the island. Go to the next one, Juji.
Don't let it work.
There you go. So this is the tentative calendar for what we're thinking of for 2025. Roosevelt Island Day, June 7th. We'll continue the outdoor summer movie series in July and August. Generally speaking, with the outdoor movie series, you have to factor in rain dates. We're almost invariably going to lose at least one showing, probably two to the rain. But hopefully we'll do okay this year. We have our annual 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony, which is also the same week as Fall for Arts. That worked out well last year. Halloween Parade and Extravaganza, October 25th, and then December 5th, our holiday tree lighting ceremony. And again, the idea is perhaps we can add some little pop-up events here and there, you know, if it makes sense and weather permitting. So we're looking into ways to do that as well. But the main thrust of it is these events. They are the ones that are most engaging and most enjoyed by the community. And so that's, you know, where we're going to sort of focus our resources, starting with Roosevelt Island Day, which I think we're hoping to make a little bit bigger this year, reusing some of the resources that we had for Earth Love Day. And that's it.
I think residents really like the holiday tree lighting, because if you go by the number of people who attended this past years, it was freezing that day. It was just this day, yet there were so many people.
Yes,
And
it
if
was
they,
very
so
cold.
that is an indication of the popularity of that
Yeah,
event.
that's, you know, a lot of the feedback on the holiday tree lighting was, you know, can you start it earlier, can you start it later? And it's kind of hard to do at that point in the year. If you start it any earlier, you're going to miss out on parents coming home. And if you start it later, it's frigidly cold. And we kind of need to keep it moving at some point.
And we have to remember, although it's for the community, it's the children who are really the ones that's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're a huge part of it.
Yes, very much so.
Jeff, do you have a question?
Yes, question, Jeff. Was wondering for the community event survey, do you have data on how many people might have not completed it, like attempted and not completed? I found that there were 38 questions, right? And I was already exhausted by in the beginning, first 12.
Yeah.
And I personally didn't complete it, but there are still answers that were recorded from the system during my time entry, if it picks that up, but if not.
If you submitted it, then we got those responses.
There's no real time.
Yes, and I agree, it was a long survey, but we were trying to be as detailed as we could get for each individual event.
Yeah.
But that's good feedback. If we do it again, maybe it's a short
Yeah,
survey.
please. Thanks.
But yes, we got the answers if you submitted it.
Did you also do paper hard copy? I know it's a lot.
The survey, no, we
It was
only did
just
it
online.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, maybe if you would have had, there would have been more responses.
It's possible, it's another sort of just a logistical challenge
Yes,
of doing that. How do you go about doing that? So keeping it online at least sort of centralize it for us. It's, you know, the form, Microsoft Forms makes it easy to view the data and see what's going on there. We'll be sending out another questionnaire probably next week to let folks vote on the summer movie series. We did that for the first time last year. That was well received. I think we're going to, based on the feedback from the questionnaire, expand the lot of movies that are available, maybe have something, you know, maybe throw in some PG-13 movies that some kids or adults might enjoy as well. They're still, you know, appropriate for the entire community.
It was the second least engaging, the summer night movie series, which was surprising, yeah.
Yeah, folks want to,
Yeah.
they want
Could
to,
be.
the feedback on that is, can you start it earlier?
Mhm.
The answer is no, because we need the sun to go down.
Okay.
But we actually are also looking into, our vendor that we've used before, told us about some technology that they might have that would allow you to start movies earlier with the sunlight.
Turn over the sky.
I don't know exactly what that entails, but we said, it'll certainly be more money, but we said price it out. We'll think about it.
Also change up the movies, have a little bit more action plan maybe.
Yeah, that's it. So next week, we'll probably send out the questionnaire and see what comes back.
Also, I don't know if you want to mention, but we have funds in our budget to hold jazz festivals as well. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of was thinking about with the pop-up sort of
Mhm.
things. And then I'll just, I can very briefly humble brag on the part of my team. You know, we've done 2023 and then we did 24. I do believe that we actually kept the cost, in spite of inflationary pressures, flat year over year. So I do want to credit Amanda Dominguez on my team. She is hugely influential in planning these. She did a great job working with finance to RFP some of this stuff early last year, which allowed us to do some cost savings. So, you know, we'll do the best we can in that regard as well this year.
I think you've done a very good job. I think you've done very well. And it's hard to please everyone. It's not easy. No matter what you do, you're gonna always have someone. But I think, for the most part, we all enjoy everything that we have had on the island.
Good. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, so I want to thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? We have one other, item on the agenda, but I have to check this
I can check
to
this.
see if he's,
This is Frank, I'm here.
okay,
The phone.
Ms. Yes, okay.
I mean,
Well, okay, then.
I don't either.
Hi,
he's actually on the phone.
hi,
He's online.
hi, Mr. Ferrance. Mr. Ferrance is going to, have a presentation for us. And, Mr. Ferrance, could you also give your title and, just let us know who you are and what you're speaking on.
Sure, this is Frank
Topic.
Ferentz. I'm the president of the Roosevelt Island Residents Association. RERA has provided for many years emergency preparedness classes for the community. We support the community in many ways. That just is one thing. And also I'm trained as an emergency manager and a graduate of FEMA's National Emergency Management Advanced Academy. And I'm here to talk today about climate adaptation. So I think in terms of following Bryant there, who was talking about happiness and fun and all of that, I'm talking about I'm talking about gloom and doom. Okay, and so I'm sorry, but we have some good constructive stuff to discuss. So I have my presentation ready to go here. I've also sent it to your, I believe, IT colleague there, Govind. Okay, so if it doesn't work here, you know, then they can turn it there. Okay? Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Oh, yeah.
You
Yes,
have to share it.
yes.
Okay, so let me try sharing. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let's hope this works. Okay, tell me, does it, I'm going,
Not yet. Okay, we see you. We see a.
you see my presentation, that is, right? I don't have a camera.
Your agenda.
Can we expand?
Okay, so just give me a moment. Okay, here we go. And then, right, I can flip back, I can see you. So this way I can flip back and forth. Very good. Okay, hello, everyone. This is a presentation on climate adaptation. This is an initial discussion because obviously this is a topic that we cannot cover in 10 minutes, but I'm going to try to do 10 minutes of justice to this topic, and we can have follow-up conversation. As you can see, these are the main points that I'd like to present. When we talk about disaster, there's a thing called the disaster management cycle, and you hear most of it talking about preparedness, but there's actually, it's one of 4 phases. Response, obviously, that's what emergency responders do, is they respond. Recovery, we do that after an emergency. So the cleanup after, for example, Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Irene on Roosevelt Island here had recovery efforts from REAC. And then mitigate, there are things that we do to mitigate, to reduce future emergencies. And REAC's actually done a fair amount of mitigation work. Resiliency is the ability to recover from or adjust to adversity or change. And I'll just say, this is part of what we're doing with the community. Mitigation is, and preparedness is part of that. This is just one facet of the broader community plan. This is a slide that I have from my regular slide deck on preparedness. And one of the reasons why we do that is it reduces stress, which produces better decision making. There's anxiety actually that people have day to day, worrying about a flood, a hurricane and such, you know, and having plans for, you know, what happens 5, 10, 15, 20 years out from now does actually reduce stress and produces, you know, a better sense of wellness and safety. In my presentations, I call it the buffet of hazards because I think buffet is a funny word, but and so it's intended to be light, you know, but we have hazards that are seasonal. You can see some of them here. We have stuff that are aseasonal that can occur at any time, and then we have combinations. So power failure plus snow plus cold is really bad, as an example. And so when we talk about climate change, I'm just going to address you more of the flooding stuff, but if you've seen the FEMA maps, we have Zone A, which is basically stuff that that's your flood zones. That's greater than 1% chance. You'll hear the term 100-year storm. If you take 1%, which is 0.01, and mathematically the reciprocal of that, that's 100. So when you hear 100-year storm, that really means a 1% chance. When you hear 500-year storm, it really means a 0.2% chance. And 1,000-year would be 0.1. I think we've been trying to do better in terms of communicating with the public. The percentages are better way of talking about this, rather than it's a 100-year storm and I have another 100-year storm, you know, 15 years later. The public doesn't understand that. So these are the zones, and let's just go to the chart here because I think I can explain them. So this is our flood mapper, you know, 2015 timeframe here, and we have the different zones here. So you'll see the V zone, which is the dark blue, and that cuts in very little on Roosevelt Island. It's mostly the A zone. So that means still the same percentage. The V means you can also have waves which come and they have a coalescive effect. That can happen on the bottom and the north end of the island, but no further than that. The majority of the island does not have any wave action. The shaded zone is what you see, and it looks like aqua or green, which looks like most of Octagon and such. That is basically we're within the what is it, the 1.1, I'm sorry, 1.2%. So 100 to 500 year storms where we can have some flooding on it. And then the rest of the island that's not shaded, that's you're in the less than 0.2%, also known as the 500 zone. Okay, that's the way it was in 2015. Let's move forward to 2050. And I chose 2050 because that's still, I can show you 2080, which looks a little bit worse, but 2050 is within the ground lease of REAC with the city. And so this is still within REAC's area of things that should be in consideration. And you can see it's, starts to get worse on that. We don't have too much encroachment of the V and the A zones, but there's some stuff in the center of the island, and this would be, it looks like Eastwood River, Roosevelt Landings has some, and then Manhattan Park has some, and then I'm just looking at this here on the map. You finally get up to Octagon Park, and Octagon Park is probably okay, but obviously Lighthouse Park gets flooded. On the southern half of the island, which you'll see the maps are old, because if you remember the old Goldwater Hospital, there's like a cutout there on the west side of the island. That's where the big driveway was. So this is an older map, but still you can get a good idea of what's anticipated for 2015. I'm just going to show you some slides here. The rest, this part I'm going to go through very quickly, so you're getting a walking tour on this. I sent a copy of the slides, so I encourage you to look at them and at a slower pace. But we distinguish between hazard mitigation, climate adaptation, and climate mitigation, and that's how we define some of these tasks and such. Weather and climate. Weather is what's happening today. Think about what you're wearing. That's in response to the weather. Climate tells you, in effect, what's happening over 20 years, a 20-year average of that. And you can look at longer averages over centuries and millennia. We have, in fact, all of these kinds of hazards. Hydrological means there's hills and water flows down hills and creates hazards at the bottoms of the hills and stuff like that. I'm going to skip this. It just sort of shows you when you see winter storms, this is roughly where the weather breaks down. And I've been teaching this in the emergency preparedness classes, but you'll see with any upcoming storms, they sort of fit this pattern. And then the tropical weather hazards are things like the hurricanes and tropical cyclones, and they have their own circulation. This is a slide that you should take a look at fairly closely, because it talks about some of the ways in which we talk about storm surge, which is the winds that blow the water into us. That was pretty bad in Sandy. And oddly enough, that those numbers, which are generic, were in fact fairly close to what we experienced here on Roosevelt Island. This is a good one to look at, because the understanding climate, and this is just sort of basics on weather, you're not going to be tested on this, is just, there's a lot of sources. It's not just a single source. I know we hear a lot about stuff from carbon dioxide, but actually things like El Nino and La Nina, this is the southern oscillation that goes on between South America and Australia. The changes in current there have a profound effect, in particular on North America, and in particular in the winter. And so when I think we're in a La Nina phase right now, but then it can go to a neutral phase and an El Nino. Heat islands, Roosevelt Island with all its greenery is actually not as less of a problem. There's obviously a big problem, in a lot of the city, but I think we've addressed this really well, on Roosevelt Island. This shows you that the carbon dioxide is increasing, and it's this thing called the greenhouse gas effect, which is basically retaining heat. So if you take a look at this, while temperatures have been rising almost everywhere, warming has not occurred uniformly. That's a key moment for us. So here's the United States, and we can see that areas in the Northeast are rising more than others around the world. I'm going to skip this. What do these things mean? This says it in a different way. If, they talk about the temperature rising, well, this is sort of a range of predictions. If it rises only 1.5 degrees Celsius, then this is what its effect would be on the United States. You can see the Northeast there. If it's 4 degrees Celsius, then you can see what its effects are. So this gives you sort of a range of scenarios that you can use for planning purposes. Again, the seas have different, areas of prediction, and we'll skip that for now. This is an important slide because it basically tells you all of the ways, in fact, climate is changing. Sea rise up, sea surface temperature up. That creates the big hurricanes, especially in the Gulf, and so on like that. And glaciers melting, that increases the sea rise, and so on. This is another good one for planning because it shows us that in our area, there's going to be hurricane vulnerability, sea level rise, heavy rainfall, and extreme heat in the Northeast there. Another way to look at this in terms of precipitation is, you have temperature, precipitation. We're definitely getting heavy precipitation and sea level rise along with annual temperature increase. I will just say, I'm going to let you read this at a slower pace. This puts it in a more textual way. This is what it looked like in New York City in 2021 and 2023, the flash floods, we remember. And in the Northeast here, we have summertime temperatures are expected to increase by approximately 3.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Precipitation, as you can see, it's not just there's more, but there are more intense storms, okay? And that's part of the problem. It also applies to hurricanes too. So what are the adaptation strategies? This is one to look at because this is the management and executive management slide here, this is how we approach it. So we engage, and the way we do that is we evaluate, communicate, monitor, and that's a continuous cycle. And then one of the ways we do that is we understand what our exposure is, assess vulnerability and risk, investigate our options, and prioritize and plan, and then take action. And then, of course, do that again. So this is clearly intended for a committee like yours on operations. So for New York City, our climate threats are sea level rise, temperature extremes, and precipitation extremes. And then this is impacting transportation and transit. There will be other things that may impact us on Roosevelt Island. So what do they talk about here is potential ways of dealing with this: stronger zoning regulations to reduce neighborhood temperature, and green roofs increase insulation and reduce exhausts from cooling systems, and also stormwater management. That's a huge problem and still will be a huge problem, as we know from the flash floods. And I think that is it. Then I tried to do that within 10 minutes. I was 2 minutes over. So. And I have lots more. I have a lot more material that I'd be able to do, or if you'd like, at a slower pace, with you or staff. But I think it's a topic because REAC, we go to 2068 in the current ground lease, and 2050 is relatively near with respect to REAC's, footprint. So maybe if this is something that we'd want to talk about. Let me just go back on the slide here. Like I said, that's the slide where, that's the executive management slide. Let's think about, what we can do on that and take, some steps that would, you know, the progress that you made, so let me just be clear, we're not looking to solve this problem overnight or this week or this month. But there are things that you can do on a month-by-month basis, a year-by-year basis, and a decades-long, you know, horizon. And that's in another slide deck. I'm happy to spend some more time with you on that. But I just wanted to get the topic started, and I know it's gloom and doom, but I think there are things that we can do here, you know, with REAC and on Roosevelt Island that does a good job of anticipating the future. And also, you know, you have a budget too, you know, that you can get a better understanding of the budgetary impacts and plan for that accordingly.
Anyone questions for Mr. Ferrand? I think when we spoke, you mentioned that maybe as residents, what we as residents might encounter, and basically, I know this is for operations and how the island would function and maybe get the barriers up and everything to protect the island. But what do you anticipate that REAC should start now?
Okay, well, one of these things is, let's start off with heat extremes and cold extremes. We've had some cold extremes which haven't been too bad, and I don't believe you had to open up the Good Shepherd Chapel for that. But you've been doing that and been responsive to that on the heat extremes. And so I would just say on that, you should expect that the heat extremes will continue, and that you will, I think that's a straightforward thing to do. That's on the, you know, smaller side. I think one of the things that you need to plan, because it does affect residents, if there's you know, significant flooding like a hurricane or something like that, I think you need to look at the sewage systems, because our sewage district is Bowery Bay, which is over in Queens, and there's a lot of problems potentially with backups on that. And as you know, many of you longtime residents remember, I think we have a sewage pump here, and when there's a power failure, then that means the sewage keeps increasing. And so that's something that we should be prepared for in terms of letting the residents know about. I guess there are ways to, you know, to tell someone if you're sitting at home in a storm, you know, and the power's out, flushing the toilet, you know, continuously, I don't know, because that's the way you're coping with stress. And you know, that doesn't, you know, maybe there are ways to conserve on that, you know, in that area. I think for us, our main, and another one would be in the, we should take a look at our trees, you know, and you know, and vegetation, because I think I can go back to, I think it's Irene or Sandy, but the trees, there's some beautiful thin pine trees on what I call the Rivercross lawn there, just near, and those have very shallow roots, so those easily topple in high winds and such. So maybe so some more on emergency preparedness. I think if there are, you know, ultimately, since we have high rises here, I'll just say this, the last two things is, we all talk about evacuation plans, and when we think about evacuation plans, we're thinking going to a Frank Sinatra School in Long Island City, or Aviation High, or the school over right near the tram on 57th and 2nd Avenue. But there's other kinds of evacuation that might be helpful, and that's known as a vertical evacuation, which we can do better than almost everywhere else in the city, because we have buildings and we have places where people go up or go inside in terms of tornadoes. So there's ways that we can make use of our infrastructure that helps protect people better. And in line with that, if we do have to evacuate the buildings, right now I don't think we have a tested plan, and that's something that REAC should think about. How do we do actual evacuations if we had to, in a high-rise building, especially with a lot of mobility impaired people. So those would be my two, suggestions. Think about vertical evacuations as part of your toolkit and your emergency plan here on Roosevelt Island, and then also your, what we can do to assist people with mobility impairment to support an emergency response.
Mr. Ferrance, I want to thank you for bringing the temperature changes to our attention, because that is something that we should consider. And I definitely think that the residents should know what to do, because I can remember the last hurricane we had, and we lost power, and it was quite frightening for many residents. So
Yes.
if we know what to expect, we can definitely be less fearful. But I want to thank you for definitely increasing our knowledge and making us think a little more about the future. Are there any questions? No one? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Ferrance.
Thank you, and I look forward to supporting REAC. Happy to help you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other committee, any other business anyone would like to bring to the committee? Okay, I think we're all very tired, and but I want to thank you all for coming to the meeting. And would someone on the committee? Oh, I can't hear Mr. Pallavi. I think he is.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I second. Okay, I'm going to close the meeting. It is now 1:42. Okay. And the meeting is closed. Thank you.
And you were scheduled for 2 hours.
Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Scheduled for 2. Yeah.